candidates from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. We are going to dive into a lot of different topics and news. I kind of want to get into some of the convention. I don't want to really get too far into it. I kind of want to get more into the ideology behind much of what we're seeing, definitely when it comes to the left. And this ideology is really based off of disrespect for others and their property. Because again, they think, well, if you got property and they don't, well, you shouldn't. Not even looking at the facts, maybe this person's worked 3 jobs to have what they have, and you work at McDonald's part-time and you're complaining. Of course, not always the circumstance, but a lot of times it is. And people that push for this, there's a reason they push for it. And the people that buy into it, I would say because maybe they're a little naive. I have one article I'm going to get into. I'm kind of debating on what. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get into this article, and then we're going to dive into a Ron Paul Liberty Report. This article, though, something that we really need to be aware of through all this infighting with different ideologies and everything we're seeing going on. Reason.com, authoritarian responses to attacks guarantees more trouble in the future. It says, let me be as blunt as and as direct as I can be. Newt Gingrich told Fox News Sean Hannity in the immediate aftermath of the terrorist attacks in Nice, France, Western civilization is in a war. We should frankly test every person here who is of Muslim background, and if they believe in Sharia, they should be deported. Sharia is incompatible with Western civilization. A Muslim background would seem to include American citizens raising the ante on the holes of the offensive and authoritarian proposal blows in the Constitution, with special attention to the First and Fifth Amendments for starters, and if Newt is willing to go after American citizens after the attacks in Orlando and Nice, what sort of inquisition does he want to impose on African Americans and civil libertarians after the murder of police officers in Dallas and Baton Rouge? But when it comes to jackbooted responses to the crisis of the moment, Newt is in good, plentiful company. He and his chums are willing not only to tighten the screws on the society around them, but to risk increasing opportunities for confrontations between people and the state. A year and a half before Mohammed, I can't even pronounce that, Buell drove a truck into Bastille Day celebrations in Nice. But after the bloody assault on the staff of Charlie Hebdo in Paris, George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley warned the greatest threat to liberty in France has come not from the terrorists who committed such horrific acts this past week, but from the French themselves who have been leading the Western world in crackdown on free speech. And it's quite a big article if you go to reason.com. Again, authoritarian responses to attacks guarantee more trouble in the future. It really gets down to what we've seen here in America and what we're seeing around the world. And really, we've already known that our rights are kind of disappearing, but the rate that they're disappearing right now should alarm people. And we have a lot of issues that we haven't fully resolved here in America, but when you look at statistics, we have come a long way. A lot of people are like, if they're so free now, why would they be so mad? Well, it's not that now they're mad. They were mad before. A lot of minorities or whatever, they have now gotten to a point where they do feel enough freedom that they can, again, push for, ending racism. But the media hypes it up to make it look worse than it is, to incite the violence and the hatred, to push their agenda and the agenda of the elites. And they really got the youth, looking at socialism as a path to communism and how it would be so great. And that kind of leads into this Ron Paul Liberty report, The Problem with Socialism. It's something that has really been a resurgence of this communistic, Marxist, socialist type rhetoric that's being pushed in universities, and it's something that we have to address now, and we have to create those alternatives and make sure that our free speech isn't censored, where these understandings of these alternatives can be heard. Let's go ahead again, this Ron Paul Liberty report, The Problem with Socialism.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. With me today is the co-host, Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Daniel, we have a special guest here today who's been a friend of Liberty. He's a professor at Loyola University in Maryland and also a senior fellow at the Mises Institute. So he obviously has to be one of the good guys. And he's written a recent book called The Problem with Socialism, written by Tom DiLorenzo. Tom, welcome to the program.
Pleased to be with you, Ron. How are you?
Well, doing well, and I'm delighted that you're with us today to dispel all the myths about socialism. I think socialism has been around a long time, free markets and capitalism has been around a long time too, but there's always a struggle from the beginning of time between freer markets versus more controlled markets. So I want to get started by trying to get the best definition, at least from your viewpoint, of what socialism is all about, because sometimes that term is thrown around by conservatives, sometimes libertarians, and they'll call so-and-so a socialist, and technically it might not fit my definition, or it might not even, be satisfactory to a Mises definition of what socialism is. So, tell us how you define socialism, and maybe what are the tipping points of moving a society like we have to an economy like we have today, which Mises predicted would become more socialistic. What might be the tipping point to push us over into true socialism?
Okay, well, in my book, I have 16 chapters, so I cover a lot of ground. And the definition of socialism, the original definition, was government ownership of the means of production, nationalization, and so forth. But then I also quote The Road to Serfdom, where Hayek, in the 1976 edition, he said that the meaning of socialism had evolved by that time to include the redistribution of income through the welfare state and the progressive income tax. And I agree with him there, that the ends were always ostensibly equality or egalitarianism, but the means evolved to include the welfare state and the progressive income tax. And then the third thing I say in my introduction to the book is that in Ludwig von Mises' book, Socialism, he says that socialists have always had a dual strategy. One, to nationalize as much property as possible, but two, he called it destructionism, to destroy the private property, free enterprise system with taxes, regulation, inflation, whatever can work. And so my book covers all three of those things. It covers redistributionism, nationalization or government-run enterprises. I have a chapter called Islands of Socialism, the Follies of Government Enterprise, for example. And then also destructionism, the effects of regulation and excessive taxation and so forth.
Do you say that we have a socialist economy right now, or just moving in that direction?
Well, I address that. I look at, if you add up all the taxes from federal, state, and local government and divide it by national income, according to the government's own statistics, you get between 35 and 40%, depending on what year you gather these statistics from. But if you add on top of that these 75,000 pages in the Federal Register, 15 cabinet departments that regulate all aspects of industry, and state and local governments that have all sorts of regulatory functions, then I think the government either owns or controls almost half of the U.S. economy. And I did have an op-ed in Breitbart a couple days ago called America's Tipping Point. And I think we are at a tipping point when we have this current election where you have Hillary Clinton advocating a $5,000 check for every new baby born and free higher education for everyone with income under $125,000. And there's no reason why if she got elected, she wouldn't quickly make that $200,000. There's more votes there, so why not? Mm-hmm. And so we're looking at a possible vast expansion of the welfare state in the coming years if that happens.
Well, the most dramatic change in our economy that I was aware of course, I frequently talk about it because of the monetary issues of closing down the Bretton Woods system August 15th of 1971. They also put on wage and price controls. And boy, the economy collapsed. Shortages overnight. It was a total despair. So the pricing mechanism is really pretty important, at least when you see the destruction of socialism. So that obviously is a major thing. And of course, Mises makes the point that that's why socialism always fails, or there's no market pricing.
That's right. That's absolutely essential, market pricing. We see that in Venezuela today, where Hugo Chavez adopted socialism in 1999, and with pervasive price controls was a part of it, and nationalization. And so today you read stories all over the internet about people, middle-class people, rooting through garbage in the streets looking for something to eat. They have hyperinflation now of 1,600%. I read in the New York Times that a hamburger in Venezuela costs the equivalent of $170 today, and anyone who can leave the country is leaving. And they've destroyed their country in about 15 years worth of socialism. And it's interesting, Ron, that not too long ago, Univision, the Latin American television network, asked Bernie Sanders if he had an opinion of the economic implosion of Venezuela and Argentina, and he said no comment for obvious reasons.
Daniel?
Tom, you make a mention earlier on about Hillary's check to new babies and free college and all this. Well, I'm wondering about another candidate's suggestion, or at least something that's made the rounds in Twitter. And this is Gary Johnson. He was asked at Freedom Fest what his view was of a universal basic income. That's where the government, as you know, the government will guarantee everyone a minimum amount of money. And while he did not jump on board, he said he was certainly open to the idea, and that he would he's attracted to it because it would reduce costs through less bureaucracy. Would you categorize this attraction to this sort of a project socialism?
Well, of course. That's my old friend Walter Williams, who's a great speech maker. He goes up to audiences of college students and surprises them by saying, "What would you call a program that forced one person to work for the benefit of another person?" And these a room full of students, I've seen this in person, they think for about 5 seconds and they say slavery is what that is. And then, what else would you call the welfare state, where you force one person to work for the benefit of another person? And that's one aspect of that. Yet the Charles Murray, who sometimes calls himself a libertarian, also wrote a whole book about this, advocating a basic government income. The Swiss took a vote on it about a month or so ago and rejected it, fortunately for the Swiss people. And it would just be a vast expansion of the welfare state. And it's hard to believe that any new government program would result in less bureaucracy. That's like saying putting more money in a swimming pool will make the water shallower rather than deeper.
Do you have a follow-up? Okay. Tom, I wanted to get your opinion about the so-called success, or the apparent political success of Bernie Sanders, because he talked on campuses, got large crowds out. He got larger crowds out than I did, and I thought I did fairly well. And he didn't mince words. He said he believed in socialism. And I'm interested in your opinion about young people now, not so much when they're leaving your university, but as they arrive to your university and what their perceptions are. And do you think the young people are definitely leaning more towards socialism? Is this a horrendously bad sign of what Sanders was talking to? Or is there still hope for some of those young people that I'm still talking to over the years? Because I'm a little bit more optimistic, but, it's not as easy for me to say, well, we have a lot of young people, they're interested in self-reliance and they don't want to be like Venezuela. What's your assessment of the young people today?
Yeah, well, that's why I wrote this book. The target audience is the millennials and their parents. But, there was this Pew Foundation poll that said 69% of voters under 30 said they could vote for a socialist for president. And that's kind of an alarming thing. But it's been my experience, though, that, I had Bernie Sanders supporters in my class last semester. And this was a class of freshmen and sophomores. And I just asked them, I said things to them like, well, I don't work for free. My doctor doesn't work for free. And so how could it be that education or healthcare could be free? Somebody's going to pay for it. And many of them had looks on their faces like it was the first time anyone had ever brought that up, that there is no such thing as a free lunch. And then once I teach them about opportunity cost, which is a pretty simple lesson, they get it. They understand it. And several of them, these students in my class, turned into people who resented Bernie Sanders because it struck them that he was playing them as fools by offering them something for nothing. And I found that they're also very interested. I put the debt clock up on a screen in my classroom. It's this clock that has, it moves about 10,000 miles an hour as every dollar of government spending adds to national debt. And they understand that this is their bill to pay, that this is going to be on their backs to pay, and they become very concerned about that. So I think a little bit of education like this and basic economics can go a long way in persuading a lot of these. A lot of my students are big fans of the television show Shark Tank. They like the idea of being independent entrepreneurs and making money. And so the millennial generation is bifurcated. You got these Bernie Sanders followers who are not very well educated, but I hope education can change that around.
Well, you know, I recall something Leonard Reed said when I'm confronted with this about numbers. There are more socialist appeal for Bernie Sanders versus some of our meetings. And Leonard would always say it's not a numbers game. You know, it's that 7 or 8 or 9% of individuals who are the thought leaders in the country, people like you that are teaching young people, the people that, are involved with the Mises Institute. And those numbers don't necessarily have to match up. So that gives me a little bit of encouragement that we think about the ideology and rather than the superficiality of some people who can get attention with offering free stuff. I guess it's hard to turn down free stuff unless they run into a professor like you or Walter Williams that realize, explain to me how something is free.
Right. Well, I ask my students, do you believe in Santa Claus? And of course they think, what is this about? Why is he asking us if they believe in Santa Claus? And then I ask them, well, why do you believe that politicians can give you something for free? Aren't they playing Santa Claus? That's where does that come from? And so if you reach them initially at that kind of level, I think it can be pretty effective, and they tend to understand what's going on here.
Professor, you mentioned Shark Tank and how young people are attracted to this idea of entrepreneurialism. What I was wondering, looking through your book, and obviously we're not going to be Venezuela overnight. We're not going to be digging through the trash cans in the middle class here. But what I wonder, and I don't know if you want to address this, but what about the cultural damage that happens with the sort of acceptance of the idea of socialism? It used to be a 4-letter word. I grew up in the 80s when we were just seeing the end of the Soviet Union. We never thought that it would make a comeback. I'd seen in an article, and I don't have it in front of me, but there was a big decrease in starting new businesses over the last year, I guess it was. So what about the cultural implications of the acceptance of the idea of socialism?
Well, there's some real dangers out there. When I Google my own book, The Problem with Socialism, to see what people might be saying about it, and if you go on Amazon and it pops up, the book next to it is called The Problem with Work, and it's by a Marxist professor. This is something, von Mises wrote about this in Human Action. One of the targets of the socialists has been to demonize the whole idea of work. They claim that the capitalists force us into this. They force us into being wage slaves. And so some of this is taught in the universities that, work is a bad thing. Maybe you should just take half a year off and live a minimal existence. And it's one thing to have people who are just plain lazy, but other people to have an ideology behind laziness and being unproductive people. That's another thing. And so they're sort of cultivating welfare parasites by demonizing work in at least part of the academic world. And that's a very bad cultural impact, I think. Another thing I'm concerned about is, the egalitarians in academia, they want to use government to force equality on all fronts, not just income, but everything. Men and women should be equal in all aspects. That we should not even talk about differences in biological differences between men and women anymore. It's uncouth to even do that, and I think that's a ridiculous direction to go in. Murray Rothbard once said that there's a reason why people sort of lampoon this idea of equality, and by citing extreme examples of it, because that's what totalitarian societies have always used as their excuse for totalitarianism, to force us into being equal. And so that's a very dangerous trend.
Yeah, just remember, all animals are equal, except some are more equal than others, is what happens. Yeah. I wanted to follow up on something you mentioned when we were talking about Venezuela. The description of what happens under socialism. It breaks down, people go hungry, and the system doesn't work. But you said prices were very high, too. And yet today there's tremendous economic confusion, with this outfit called the Federal Reserve, because they have a precise policy, if we only can get prices to go up and depreciate and devalue the money at least 2% or more, then that will be a sign of economic growth. But I think what most people forget, and they never get taught, except in under special circumstances where we have some Austrian economists teaching, and that is that you can have inflationary depressions, and that inflation is depressive to the economy, and yet this whole thing of the Federal Reserve being designed, if we can only get 2+ prices going up and ruin anybody who wants to save money, then we wonder why this system fails.
One of the chapters in my book is called Destroying Capitalism by Socializing Capital, and it's about the Fed, among other things. It's a short chapter. It's not a big treatise on the Fed. But yeah, the Fed causes boom and bust cycles. And another example I can cite is Sweden. Bernie Sanders and the rest, they tout democratic socialism. Well, Venezuela, by the way, is a democratic country. But Sweden, when their economy imploded in the 1980s, because they had tried to print their way into prosperity, their welfare state began to collapse of its own weight. So they had hyperinflation, and they had 500% interest rates in Sweden, and that was a calamity, but it was caused by their central bank. And isn't it ironic that the Nobel Prize in Economic Science, by the way, is sponsored by the Swedish central bank? It's not sponsored by Alfred Nobel and the Nobel Foundation. It's a Swedish central bank that once created 500% interest rates in their own country, and we're supposed to look up to them as the world's experts in all things correct with regard to economics.
Right. We're getting near the end of the program, but there is time for another question that fascinates me, because you have a chapter on this, and I get asked this, or they charge me with this idea. Oh yeah, we want socialism, but not like Venezuela, or not like Mussolini socialism. We want good socialism. An example in the Scandinavian countries, they're the good guys. Tell us a little bit of the shortcomings of that type of an argument.
Well, to use Sweden as an example again, Sweden was a great free market capitalist society in the late 19th, early 20th century. Beginning in 1870, they had the highest per capita income growth in the world for 50 years. And then the socialists took over. They nationalized industry. They adopted a huge welfare state, steeply progressive income taxes. And according to the Swedish Economic Association, there was not one single net new job created in Sweden from 1950 until 2005. 55 years of zero job growth. So they basically ate up all their capital, and then that's the point where they reached where they had already tried to print their way out of trouble by printing vast amounts of money. And they did have some reforms in Sweden. They deregulated, they privatized some industries, they cut marginal income tax rates, and made a bit of a comeback since then. But the per capita income in Sweden is still lower than Mississippi, which is our poorest state. Wow. So it's hard to be a role model for us.
So they want some people want us to emulate the Scandinavian countries and Sweden, and avoid all the pitfalls, which is obviously not going to be possible, because I think the ideas of collectivism are alive and well, but I'm still the perpetual optimist, believing individuals like you and others who are out there changing people's minds that there is a difference. And the other thing is I think there's a vacuum out there, and this thing is going to come apart, and maybe we'll do much better than Venezuela by, providing an alternative to it. But Tom, I want to thank you very much for being with us today, and I want to advise our listeners to make sure they get a copy of this. I'm sure it can be found on Amazon, and It's a great little book, and not that expensive, so you can buy several and pass them around. Tom, thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks, Ron, and thanks, Daniel, for the brilliant questions.
And I want to thank our audience for being with us today, because this is obviously an issue that is very important and timely when we've just gone through an election where an avowed socialist did quite well. And it tells us that we have a job ahead. We have to refute it. We have to do it intellectually. We have to offer a better idea, and we have the opportunity, because socialism fails. Socialism can't work. It didn't work in the Soviet system or the Mussolini system or the Venezuela system. And as Tom just described, it didn't work in Sweden either, if you look at the true facts of the matter and just not gloss over them. So socialism is just armed might forced by the government. It's not freedom. And the best example I think Tom did was citing Walter Williams that said, when you take from one and give to the other, what's this called? And these individuals who lean towards socialism, they say, oh, if you take from one by force and give to another, that's called slavery. Well, that's what socialism is all about. And it's slavery in the economic sense. And when you have an authoritarian government that imposes social regulations and telling people how to live, it's a form of slavery and domination and tyranny. In the same way overseas, if we do it with foreign nations and tell other people what to do, it's the same type of use of force which always fails and doesn't work, and that is what we have to refute. And that is refuted by the principle of the non-aggression principle, that we should accept this idea that nobody, especially government, can't use force to make and remake the world, cannot regulate the economy and not tell how people should live. Under those conditions, I do believe that we could have peace and prosperity. Thank you very much for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com, and Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Check them out, subscribe. Now, most of these Bernie Sanders supporters, you can't even bring a lot of these things up. They literally, start cursing you down, or, just they will not actually have a legitimate conversation. Others will, and I've met some, and they because they're so emotions, this whole election cycle, emotionally involved in, we're getting the short end of the stick, which I will agree. A lot of citizens get the short end of the stick, but a lot of it, again, becomes of your own making because of your unwillingness to actually educate yourself. And I'm not talking about going to school. I'm talking about having a true, involvement in the things that affect your life, where you are 100% when you go look into something. You don't be someone that just leaves all kinds of stones unturned. You need to start flipping mountains over. It becomes one of those things that in a lot of situations you will have a root ideology, but you might not have, the best understanding of solution. But that comes with the, true seeking of what you want and how it's accomplished. And I think a lot of true libertarians really understand that. And a constitutionalist to look at as the Second Amendment, where a libertarian looks at it as a natural right. And it's the understanding that you're not going to have this utopia. This utopia is something that the left always promises. And they always claim that, it's the libertarians that believe in this utopia where you don't need government. And it's untrue. It's saying that government is only an addition to... Sorry, I'm getting little updates. The government is only an addition to the problems that we have in society. And the bigger government gets, the more they become the root of a lot of issues within society. when you look at libertarian ideology, it basically comes down to we want to live peaceful. We want to, have choices, prosper, or, live the life that we choose. Some people might want to be minimalists. Others might want nice, shiny things. And you have the freedom to seek out whatever lifestyle you want. What progressives on both sides want is more control. Because some of them actually believe they can create this utopia. Others go, hey, life is short. I want to get power, and lots of it, before I die. And it's hard to tell one from the other. And when I look at Hillary, I have no idea. But it will be a progressive of what we have now. Will increase, decrease, we don't know. She comes from the same ideology as Obama. That Saul Alinsky ideology. Why I say it's hard is Obama followed, Saul Alinsky's work. Hillary knew Saul Alinsky. Hillary took his ideas and revolutionized his ideas. See an interview with D'Souza and talking about his new Hillary's America that will be coming out. And he really explained a lot of, we know the path that Hillary will take. We just don't know at what speed. With Trump, people are going to side with Trump because, they rather go with the unknown than what has been proven to be wrong. And will that put Trump over the top? I think it will. I think it will be a tight race, but I think there is that possibility. And honestly, I don't even know if he believed that would have been a possibility. But now it is. Okay. I want to try to get these clips out of the way. Give me a second here. Okay. This one from Ben Swan. Since we're talking about Hillary, I wanted to go ahead and cover this reality check. No charges against Clinton prove one very important thing. And
you need a website. Why not do
give me a second here.
Wix? It's easy to create your own stunning website.
Okay, here we go.
Well, the FBI says no charges should be filed against Hillary Clinton. You know that by now. And a federal judge on Monday declined to order the deposition of Clinton over whether she deliberately thwarted federal record-keeping laws, but did not rule out the possibility that the former Secretary of State may be yet forced to testify. The real question for us tonight, is Clinton being treated differently than the average American? Let's give the FBI director a reality check.
Secretary Clinton said, I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material. Was that true?
No, there was classified material emailed.
Secretary Clinton said she used just one device. Was that true?
She used multiple devices during the 4 years of her term as Secretary of State.
Secretary Clinton said all work-related emails were returned to the State Department. Was that true?
No, we found work-related emails, thousands, that were not returned.
Well, Republicans on Capitol Hill hit FBI Director James Comey with a barrage of questions just weeks ago. At the center of that questioning, if Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, mishandled classified information, how has she not been charged yet if the answer was yes? Well, here was Comey's answer.
And we don't want to put people in jail unless we prove that they knew they were doing something they shouldn't do.
Well, by now, we all know that the FBI ultimately determined not to charge Clinton. But do you understand why? Well, first of all, there are 3 levels of classification set by the U.S. government: confidential, secret, and then top secret. Comey said that the FBI found 110 emails in 52 email chains from the Clinton servers that contained information that was classified at the time they were sent or received. Now, of those email chains, 36 were found to include information labeled secret. 8 were found to contain information labeled top secret. And that means the repeated claims made by Clinton for months that she never sent any classified material that was classified at the time is not true.
I never sent or received any classified material.
There is no classified materials. There was no transmission of any classified information.
So why was Clinton not charged? Well, Comey said he did not recommend Clinton be prosecuted for gross negligence because only one person in 99 years has been. To be clear, by any straightforward interpretation, Hillary Clinton broke the law. The law bans negligently hosting classified information in an unauthorized location.
It sure looks real careless to me. The question of whether that amounts to gross negligence, frankly, is really not at the center of this, because when I look at the history of the prosecutions and see it's been one case brought on a gross negligence theory, I know from 30 years there's no way anybody at the Department of Justice is bringing a case against John Doe or Hillary Clinton for the second time in 100 years based on those facts.
So what you need to know is that what Comey said during his testimony is that opinions are irrelevant. The problem is, it was Comey's opinion that led to no charges being filed. The bottom line, it was a value judgment on whether or not, letter of the law aside, Clinton's conduct was immoral enough to warrant charges. Now, that's certainly something that reasonable people can disagree on, prosecutors and likewise. But what is most stunning about Comey's statement was not simply that he won't recommend charges against Clinton, but when he said that the decision to not bring charges against Clinton, quote, does not suggest that in similar circumstances, a person who engaged in this activity would face no consequences, end quote. Meaning that somebody, anybody else who does the exact same thing could or would be charged. And that alone demonstrates what so many people are upset about, that there absolutely are 2 sets of rules. One for the ruling class and one for the rest of us. That's Reality Check. Let's talk about that tonight on Twitter.
And we have always said that, but what is unique about our time right now is everything's done out in the open. They don't hide what they do anymore. She lied, she was caught. You'd think she'd be like, at least I'm not in jail. I sit on the sideline. No, she's running for president. They don't care. They do it out in the open now. And it really irks me because this election is perfect for a third-party candidate. We do have Gary Johnson. He will pull pretty high. I don't think he's a good enough candidate to win as third party. But he will pull high. I think that he will set a precedent for a third party. I just don't think that he's enough of a libertarian. He's definitely not my type of libertarian. He says quite a bit that just goes, whoa, that's not even close to libertarian. And it really irks me because I would hope for, that Ron Paul to pop up. Wouldn't that have been just crazy? Ron Paul popped up, start pulling even up there. Where we're headed, it's really not looking good for America. You can see it in our economy. You can see it in our elections. You can see it in the urban areas. And it's really going to start affecting the rural areas too. We see what a lot of the elite are doing. They're preparing for chaos. When you have a lot of these very wealthy people buying up lots of property, building compounds, they're getting ready for something. They're seeing everything we're seeing. We know the media hypes things up to cause it to get as bad as it is. A lot of it due to them hyping it up. Now, you see what happened with Alex Jones. It's all over media, social media. And, I kind of seen that happening when we've seen how violent some of the red flag bearers, shall we say, and they were yelling Nazi scum at Alex Jones while they're waving a communist flag, basically. Even though Nazis were fascists, the socialists, the communists, they're all the same. They're all in the same spectrum of ideology. They just have different beliefs where your efforts should be spent. Okay. I want to get on here. Sorry, guys. Okay, finally. Get my browser back up. Christopher Green, AMTV, Turkey coup, what you need to know. And now I was trying to report what was currently happening in Turkey on air, but that night, shortly after broadcast, things started turning for the coupers. There's definitely a lot of weird things that happen. Now, kind of during the broadcast, I mentioned that there are a few reports it was only portions of the military and how quick they gave up. And what this signals to me is the military, these people were led to believe that there was going to be a full military coup. You know, minus the officials, some certain officials, definitely head of police and stuff like that. Well, they initiate this coup. The rest of the military doesn't join. They allow this helicopter. They keep flying over real low, allowing this helicopter to engage, and then finally shoot it down after it's done a little bit of damage. It seems like this was a setup to initiate more dictatorial power. And I think it worked. And these guys were patsies in it. Now, if that's true, what that also does is it hurts, you know, other militaries around the world to stand up to dictators in their own country because, oh yeah, there's this plan. This plan. What happens when, you know, they pull Turkey on us? This was all set up. False flag. And now there's a lot of reports out talking about that. It was something I already kind of was looking at, like, something isn't right. There's something not right when that little of the military comes out. Other military, nowhere to be found. Except the jets. And it was police and civilians. Something was just off. There was something not right. Okay. Let me go ahead and get into this.
Get in your face. This is Christopher Green here. No, I'm joking. Sorry.
Sweet, man. That was I was actually going to ask him to do that.
I had to. I love that slogan. I need a slogan myself. Honor, pleasure to be on your show. Love AMTV. They do really great work.
Thank you so much, man. No problem. You do really great work. Luke, we are change. We need to come up with a tagline, man.
I know.
Do you have anything top of mind? Like,
Nothing,
world traveler?
It's
or
usually just like, subscribe. Yeah, we need your help and support. What tagline I should have, let me know in the comment section below this video, and I will use it. Or at least for one of the videos. You make it really weird, and it's the top one on the comments, I will use it. I promise. Just at least once.
Sweet. Turkey. Big breaking story. We put out a couple of videos today. People are like, Christopher, why aren't you talking about Turkey? I'm like, well, because the video is coming out today. We recorded yesterday, and then we had to render them. It took like 3 hours. We had to post thumbnails, do all that work, etc. So you covered some of this today, I think, on your channel. What are your thoughts? I mean, this is a massive change, upheaval potentially in the Middle East. You think this was expected by the Obama administration? Is this a surprise?
Yeah. I don't think anyone expected this right now. From all the initial reports that I've been seeing right now, it looks like the coup may not even be successful. It looks like it's a portion of the military, and there's reports of course, tanks on the streets, the airport's being closed down, no flights coming in. There's a report of a F-16 shooting down a helicopter. It's military fighting military. It's protesters fighting protesters. There's one section of the town which is really pro Enderun, and the other portion is really get rid of him. We finally have this coup d'etat. But what we're seeing right now is the Obama administration just came out in support of the president of Turkey, who is an autocrat. You look at what he did throughout his rule. It is horrendous and horrible. He has abused the power that was given to him. He has tortured people. He has imprisoned people. He has fabricated evidence. He has censored the internet. He has censored online freedom. He has censored any form of expression or criticism against him, and he's ruling with an iron fist. The military made a statement, the portion of the military that did this coup d'etat, they're saying that they're doing this for the rule of law. And they feel like Erdogan really just went way far and above and really hurt Turkey. And we're seeing that. We're seeing the remnants of that because Turkey was the major purchaser of ISIS oil, illegal oil that they were buying cheap from ISIS. They opened up the borders. They allowed ISIS to get in there. They allowed the foreign fighters to come through Turkey to get it into Syria to get rid of Bashar al-Assad. They were doing this mainly for a number of different reasons to get rid of Bashar al-Assad inside of Syria, which was their main goal. So because
it hasn't happened yet, but that's what they want to happen.
Of course, it's a lot of Western forces pushing, and we have to understand this is huge, important news. Hillary Clinton even admitted we confronted her representatives, their spokespersons. I even confronted Hillary herself. I was like, you guys started ISIS. Hillary Clinton even admitted it.
CIA.
Exactly, and we're seeing all these ramifications blow up in everyone's face, order out of chaos. We're seeing what just happened in Nice. We're seeing what happened at the Turkish airport. And I think, really, a lot of people in Turkey, I think this portion of the military, this is at least my analysis, this is just breaking. So we haven't really evaluated all the evidence as it's still breaking. But from my point of view right now, Erdogan focusing all of his forces, all of the military against the Kurds, allowing ISIS to thrive, supporting ISIS, financing them, giving them weapons and arms, is blowing up in their face. They went after Russia because Russia was destroying the oil pipeline that ISIS created, that Turkey was buying all cheap oil, with the president's son being involved in that, almost caused a global war in that entire region. And I think a lot of people inside of Turkey are like, holy crap, we financed our enemy who's bombing our airports right now. This is enough. And we've seen Turkey within the last few weeks trying to better relations with Israel, going to Russia and saying sorry for destroying and bombing your warplane that flew over, what was it, 30 seconds? Or not even over the thing, and almost created a global conflict. So I think maybe the president of Turkey saw this coming. There's also a lot of Turkish government officials who are spending money with U.S. lobbyists and U.S. law firms trying to have good relations with the United States. Obama right now is in support of the president who the military is going up against. So I think this is very random. I think this wasn't expected. I don't think there's a bigger play here, but we're going to see how the events unfold, and we're going to be covering it live on our YouTube channel like we always do as it's breaking. As soon as I heard this, I ran up to my room looking, fact-checking everything, and I just released 2 videos today on this very important topic.
Well, one thought I had was, how is Russia linked to this potentially? I mean, could Putin be, behind helping this coup, which kind of seems like a major shift in the Middle East, which is a shit show, by the way, thanks to Obama and arguably thanks to Bush, too.
I mean, Putin is trying to restore relations with Turkey, and they have been in the process of doing that lately. Turkey also is in a very powerful position with that canal that runs from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean, and they could shut off Russian supplies that are going into Syria right now at any moment, at any time. They haven't done so because it's mutual annihilation. They know if they go after each other, they're going to mutually destroy themselves. So you see them kind of back off. The tension is still there. As far as Putin's involvement, I don't know how he would be involved. I don't know if he would help him. I'm not seeing any form of evidence providing this, but obviously a weaker Turkey helps him because Turkey is one of the key countries standing in the way of Syria and of destroying ISIS.
And I just don't see Russia being a part of this. I think Russia is formulating its next moves in the whole chess game of the world right now. I think at this time it wouldn't be in Russia's best interest to, try to involve itself in a coup d'etat. I just don't see them looking at that as a reasonable thing. I think it would be more internal. From everything I've looked at, this really points to, you got to look at how many people they went after. And I'm not talking about the soldiers. I'm talking about judges, teachers, professors, all the way down the line. They had names. They were prepared. That's one thing that makes you go, hey, this seems like it might have been a little staged. You needed all opposition gone. I think that's what this came down to. A final grab of power by removing opposition. This was done in Germany. It will be done in other nations. It's a tactic. To get that final control, you have to go after opposition. And a lot of people don't realize what, positions alternative media put themselves in. Now you'll see some that, we're for liberty, all this, and then all of a sudden, they're Bernie Sanders, and it becomes a joke almost, because they're willing to change, or they never had a true ideological principle that they stood on. If you're willing to go, I'm with Ron Paul, and then I'm going because I love his ideology, but then go to Bernie or Trump. A lot of us have been more libertarian than even the Libertarian Party. And that's something that I've realized throughout the years, is that many of us that were, a part of the grassroots modern day Tea Party at the very beginning, and not the beginning that the Tea Party nowadays wants to say was the beginning, the actual beginning of the modern day Tea Party. And it started with Ron Paul. It grew to a large thing in the 2008 election. And after that, you've seen established organizations with money pop up. Tea Party this, Tea Party that. That really hijacked the grassroots movement. And then they got all the funding, and it's grassroots. Look at all of our grassroots supporters. Yeah, but you're not grassroots anymore, because while you weren't a part of it at the beginning, you pop in with all this money and a fancy slogan. It was a hijacking of the Tea Party. And then when you can see some of those people so disenfranchised because Rand Paul or Ted Cruz didn't get power, that you say, I'm going with Bernie because he's grassroots. What the hell does that have to do with belief and principle? You kind of either truly believe in freedom and liberty, or you don't. This in between has got to stop, because what that in between does is it allows for that authoritarian reach to keep grabbing. Because if you don't really find your root ideology, if you believe in liberty, you will be persuaded with candy, basically. It's a slippery slope, and I've seen so much of it. It irks me. And, we have a lot of people now posting Sheriff Clark. And, I heard in one interview how he was talking, and even his speech at the RNC, and the true problem is he's so emotionally involved because, well, he's law enforcement. He basically came out and said that he's glad when these cops get off on, these cases that they might be involved in someone's injuries or death. And that kind of irked me because, I don't agree with these shootings. I don't agree with just, randomly attacking anyone, let alone law enforcement. But I also think it's the duty of good law enforcement, if they have true morals and good ethics, they would call out the bad law enforcement and say, we need to look at what these people do. These people need to act in a different way. When you treat all of society as a suspect first, you're going to have a society of suspects. What does that do to law enforcement? What does that do to society? You're seeing it. And I've said it before, with the interacting in all negative ways. I don't know of one person that has a cop get behind them going down the highway or the road or anywhere. Go, oh, now I feel safe because there was law enforcement behind me. Most of the time it's, oh no, I'm going to be hassled by law enforcement. I'm going to have a negative experience. Because we don't have true community policing. We do in places, and a lot of times it is the sheriffs that are the ones that I have a little bit more respect for. A lot of the city police that I've met are kind of pretty meat-headed. They want to, they're all about getting out there and getting rough. Just kind of that, almost that roid rage, whether they are or not, they kind of have that attitude. And I think a lot of it comes in the training, and a lot of it comes in this brotherhood that accepts it. Again, if you're going to be good law enforcement, then you have to start changing your ways, and when others don't, call them out. Because until you do that, you're not going to have the respect of the people around you, and you can turn this into a police state, but it only turns into violence. You further pit yourself, your family, ourselves, our families, all in danger. For what? For some people at the very top to get rich off of your bloodshed, our bloodshed, anyone's blood? You don't feed into the divide and conquer. we have to stop going race or religion or, gender or, gender identity. We have to stop with that and really get down to the basics of freedom and liberty. Getting to choose your own lifestyle, your own way of living, whether you want to be a farmer or live in the city and be a, office worker or club owner, whatever you decide to do. Live your life the way you choose without harming others, without abusing other people's rights. That things are accomplished through voluntary interaction rather than coercion. Because otherwise, you're only feeding into giving a certain portion of the population rights that others don't have, which then infuriates those others. Then it flips around, and now you're on the bottom and they're on top, and it keeps flipping, and you keep fighting. And guess what? Other people are living that lifestyle that you wish you could be in. And it's a very, very few that ever get picked to be in that type of group. And most of them are still only puppets, and if shit hits the fan, they'll be thrown to the wolves. And a lot of them don't realize that, hey, they're the bait. They're not the master. Okay, give me a second here. I wanted to find this one Dinesh D'Souza interview, if I can find it here. Okay. Not finding what I'm looking for. Let me try this again. Okay. I can't find the one that I listened to. I do have this short one here from AMTV. I'll go ahead and play that one. But this kind of gets into the ideology and the belief in the way Hillary came to being. And really, she is Obama on steroids, basically. So let's get into this AMTV Dinesh D'Souza.
There's no filter here. I tremble for my country when I recall that God is just. He's acknowledging that slavery is a kind of condemnation on himself and on America. He knows that. He says there's no attribute of the Almighty that can take our side in this contest. So this is Jefferson. He's very aware of it.
Dinesh, maybe a little more information on your film. It's launched, I think, July 25th. Is that correct?
No, July 22nd it opens
July 22nd.
nationwide. Yes.
You think this will be bigger than 2016?
I think it will, and I hope it will. The issues are more urgent. It's a lot better movie, and it's releasing in a much wider way. I've got the other two movies behind me, so I'm optimistic that this will take off in a bigger way.
Do you think you've been unfairly persecuted by the administration, Obama?
Well, I mean, look, let's just say that no other American has gone into the lockup for doing what I did. I mean, that's just a fact. My case involved no corruption. I exceeded the campaign finance limit. It's true. Normally, those cases go to the Federal Election Commission. You get a fine and some community service. I think I was selectively prosecuted.
Why is there a double standard? Why can Hillary Clinton get away with, building a massive infrastructure with private emails, et cetera, but you have to face,
Because we are under a very corrupt administration. Hillary is even more corrupt than the Obama administration, but the Obama administration has made a decision to protect her. So Obama's been signaling for 2 months now to Comey and to Loretta Lynch, Hillary's my gal, leave her alone. And I think they got the message. In my case, Obama was not exactly happy with my movie, and he unleashed, through his administration, the dogs of Eric Holder and the Justice Department against me.
What are your thoughts on Donald Trump?
A bit of a wild card, echoing themes that have become neglected. The most politically incorrect man in America. I like the fact that he's unapologetic about his wealth in a way that Romney was on the defensive. He's a bit of a wild card. I don't really know what he would do, and so I'm kind of choosing between something I don't know and the evil that we do know.
We see a lot of division in American politics right now. Of course, there was a tragic death of 2 young African Americans. The mainstream media is propelling this narrative. Maybe it's something you'll even explore in a future film. Do you think this is engineered, or do you think this is a real race war that we have in America today?
No, I don't think it's a race war. I think really what's happening is that the urban plantations created by the Democrats are boiling over. They've created these plantations 50 to 75 years ago. They stuck people in them. They make it difficult to leave. It's not just the blacks. I mean, there's plantations for the blacks, but it's reservations for the Indians, ghettos, barrios, and slums. So the Democrats have this terrible legacy that they have created. They're responsible for it. Those neighborhoods are run entirely by the Democratic Party. The difference between the old plantation and the new is that the people in the new plantations keep voting for it.
What is your goal with your film, the Hillary piece? Is there
The goal of my film is to get people to think, to enlighten them, to show them things that they don't know, and to try to. It's also to unify and mobilize conservatives and Republicans. It's try to convince guys on the fence to rethink their assumptions. It's to flummox and dismay the left.
You think Hillary Clinton wins?
I hope not.
I think we all hope not. AMTV Christopher Green. Now, I'm definitely a little hyped to get to see this. I think he does a great storytelling of history in a way that we're not supposed to know. When we look at how they tell history, it's very, very lopsided. And then, of course, you have the other side that plays off of that and wants to distort it for their own beings. Both are only versions and not really based completely on fact. It's hard to see what's going to happen in the future. and with what candidate. But if we get Hillary, I'm definitely seeing suppression of free speech, the Second Amendment, the Fourth and Fifth Amendment, the 10th Amendment. I just think that you will see utter destroying of our republic and any freedom or liberty, except for those that may be able to get out. Okay. Let me see if I can get this up here. So many things open here. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm at the economic collapseblog.com. There is an article that I'm not going to read, but I urge people to go check out. Right now, it's the second article on the front page. Aragon's staged coup has resulted in purge of 50,000 teachers, judges, soldiers, and government officials. And I urge people to check that out. The article I am going to read is top article right now on the economiccollapseblog.com. $19.4 trillion in debt. We have added $1.1 trillion a year to the national debt under Obama. In 2006, U.S. Senator Barack Obama's voice thundered across the Senate floor as he boldly declared that increasing America's debt weakens the U.S. domestically and internationally. Washington is shifting the burden of bad choices today onto the backs of our children and grandchildren. That was one of the truest things that he had ever said, but just a couple years later, he won the 2008 election and he turned his back on those principles. As I write this article, the U.S. national debt is sitting at a grand total of $19,302,890,929.46. But when Barack Obama just entered the White House, the federal government was only $10.6 trillion in debt. That means that we have added an average of $1.1 trillion a year to the national debt under Obama, and we still have about 6 more months to go. Even though Barack Obama is on track to be the first president in all of U.S. history to not have a single year when the U.S. economy grew by 3% or better, many have still been mystified by the fact that the economy has been relatively stable in recent years. Not really stable. Year to year, maybe. But it's been, it's getting better, bam, right back down. Like, okay, we're back down here. Oh, it's getting better. Oh, it's picking up. Oh, bam, right back down. That's what we've been seeing. And being someone that interacts in a part of industry that caters to a lot of other industries, I definitely see where we're at, and not looking too good right now. But the explanation is rather simple. Actually, anyone can live like a millionaire if the credit card companies will lend them enough money. You could even do it yourself. Just go out and apply for as many credit cards as possible and then spend money like there is no tomorrow. In no time at all, you will be living the high life. Of course, many of you would immediately object to that a day of reckoning would come eventually, and you would be right. Just like those that abuse credit cards, a financial day of reckoning is coming for America too. In the United States today, our standard of living is being massively inflated by taking trillions of dollars of future consumption and moving it into the present. Politicians love to do this because it makes them look good and they can take credit for an economic recovery. But what we are doing to our children and grandchildren is beyond criminal. On average, we are stealing more than $100 million from future generations of Americans every single hour of every single day. We are complete and utter pigs, and yet most Americans don't see anything wrong with what we are doing. At this point, our national debt is more than 30 times larger than it was just 40 years ago. Many, including myself, have argued that it is now mathematically impossible for the U.S. government to ever pay all of this debt. The only thing that we can do now is to keep the party going for as long as possible until the day reckoning inevitably comes. Under Obama, our national debt will come close to doubling. What that means is that during Obama's 8 years, we will accumulate almost as much debt as we did under all the other presidents in U.S. history combined. Right now, the U.S. government is responsible for about a third of all government debt in the entire world. Fortunately, the financial world continues to lend us gigantic amounts of money at ridiculously low interest rates. But if that were to ever change, we would be in an enormous amount of trouble very rapidly. And I'm let you read the rest of that, the economiccollapseblog.com. We are in trouble because other countries are realizing that America is starting to collapse in on itself. We are getting to that point. I did have like a small clip here covering this, if I can find it now. Where did it go? Sorry, guys, I can't find it. Where did it go? It disappeared. Of course. It's gone. I guess we'll just go ahead and move on. But what I'm trying to say is we are headed in a situation where the more our national debt increases, basically not really increasing, but the rate that it's increasing. You know, we start off with, what was it, 10.6 trillion, and we've almost doubled that under one president, 2-term. Think of what the next president can do, and when other nations go, we're done. Kind of basically like what's going on when the Brexit, you know. We're tired of being interlinked with other countries. We're tired of not having our choice in the matter. I think that we are definitely not looking good. And again, I don't see what any of these presidents are going to do to help. I don't. Now, has anybody heard about Russia warning about the chance for World War? I've seen a lot of articles. I know he's been warning about everything going on in the world, that we are basically in a world war. I guess that's something to be said, but what's going to hit us first? That or, what's going on here? What's going on worldwide is also going on here. Just maybe not to its entirety. But how long does that last? Okay. Sorry. Now, there's talk currently that Ted Cruz and others are going to launch some coup against Trump at the convention. Alex Jones put something out. You have Karl Rove coming out saying that the Libertarian Party, the only option, which I've said before, I kind of wonder if Gary Johnson was their alternative if Trump won. And he said some things that make him so un-libertarian that it makes me wonder. It really does. Now, there was a little girl, someone posted this from Pokemon Go's photo. Only thing that I've seen that I've liked about Pokemon Go. And it's not the little girl exactly playing it. What she did is she started her own little Pokestop shop. So people come find Pokemon there. And she had what looked like to be blue juice or Kool-Aid with blue bags of, looked like some ranch tortilla chips, then some red Kool-Aid looking stuff with the nacho cheese tortillas, and then some yellow bag of potato chips with some lemonade or whatever. Entrepreneur. That's it says here that she is making $200 per day. Little girl knew how to get the money. Okay, I want to get into this last clip here. This one I didn't lose. I just have to pull it up. What is going on here? Okay. Here we go. Now, when we look at Alex Jones at the RNC blowhorning in that square where the cops rushed him away after he was being attacked by the communists. And I look at that whole thing is playing into exactly what they want. If you go blowhorning, you're not going to get a message across. Definitely with a lot of these groups. you're only pushing them away even farther from your way of thinking. Now, if you actually have legitimate, conversations, and you can shoot down their ideas and beliefs with just plain logic, some of what you heard in that Ron Paul Liberty Report, you'd be amazed. They have to go back and start rethinking. I have this one here from Ben Swan, civil rights icon, says Black Lives Matter activists, unlovable little brats. Here we go.
Well, former UN ambassador and civil rights icon Andrew Young has been called out by Black Lives Matter activists and the NAACP for referring to protesters as unlovable brats. Is the ambassador, who, by the way, is also a CBS 46 contributor, right, or is he out of touch? Let's give it a reality check.
Those are some unlovable little brats out there sometimes. But you still got to love them anyway, and you got to understand them.
Well, Andrew Young there speaking about Black Lives Matter activists who have been protesting across the country en masse. Tonight, I'm going to hit on 3 areas of what Young said and why it has created such a backlash. Let's start with that statement about activists being unlovable little brats. First of all, activists and citizens who have been marching in these protests across the nation and here in Atlanta are not children. The term brat or little brat indicates that they are young, immature, petulant, irrational, and spoiled. What is true about those who are marching? Well, the term Black Lives Matter, first of all, let's start there. It was born in July of 2013 in a Facebook post by Alicia Garza called A Love Letter to Black People. It then took off after the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. That was in the summer of 2014. Since that time, over the past 3 years, there have been Black Lives Matter marches in virtually every major city in the United States. Atlanta, Chicago, New York, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Francisco, Oakland, Cleveland, St. Louis, Ferguson. If you can name a major city, then they have seen marches. Not only that, but collectively, hundreds of thousands of people from various age groups, socioeconomic backgrounds, and races have all taken part. Not simply a group of little brats.
A protest was a serious price to pay. You had to be willing to risk your life.
So the second major issue that Young appeared to demean the protest by saying the protesters are simply showing off. The ambassador is correct that during the civil rights era, there was a heavy price to pay for protesting. But it is the heavy price that black men have been paying that has inspired the protesters to use their voices. Young says protesters do not have a clear message.
They're showing off, and not even with a clear message. Now, I'm not blaming them for that.
Well, Young may be right that not all activists have solutions, but there is something to be said for people standing up and demanding that something be done, which is why where Ambassador Young made the comments is also upsetting. He did so at a private meeting with Atlanta police. So what you need to know is that many young protesters may not know that Andrew Young himself marched with Dr. King and was there marching with Dr. King during King's assassination in Memphis in 1968. Andrew Young and civil rights activists waged a dangerous fight, and many paid a heavy price. After making those comments about Black Lives Matter activists, Andrew Young has now said that he is sorry, that he was wrong, and that his granddaughter was ashamed. Today, activists have continued to fight for what they perceive as continued injustice. They are fighting to change policing tactics and to battle a system that they believe is broken. Black Lives Matter was actually born out of the understanding, though, of this one statistic, that according to the National Safety Council, black males are 21 times more likely to be shot, maimed, or killed at the hands of police than any other racial group. And that is what these activists are working to change. To criticize them without having walked with them, talked with them, or listened to what they're fighting for, that's simply unfair. That's Reality Check. Let's talk about that tonight on Twitter.
Ben Swan, Reality Check. Ben Swan on YouTube. Go there, subscribe, truththemedia.com. Check that out too. Now, there's parts of that I agree with, the other parts I don't. Going out and protesting something being done without a true understanding of how we got where we are, I think only calls for more government, which ends up being the opposite of what you actually want to achieve goals. Because government will stop you from accomplishing things. That's the more government you have, the more you have that. And it's just been proven throughout history in almost every culture, every empire nation. It's when societies are able to breathe and experiment and look into possibilities. Whether that be a lifestyle or, a religious belief. With one understanding, you don't abridge other people's rights to the same thing. But that also means that you can't dictate because something offends you. Again, if that person's sticking to not trying to use coercion or force to impose their beliefs on you and abridge your rights to your own lifestyle, what happens out in public, you can't control. Because that's not your property. That's for everyone. You will get offended, but that doesn't give you the right to push something upon someone. And it's not something to get angry at just because you're offended. It's something to go, that's not what I agree with. That's their choice, not what I agree with. Most people that don't have a strong belief in what they say they believe are usually the most threatened by the exposure of their children to other beliefs. Because if you truly have a belief and a true understanding and knowledge of that belief, and it's a good belief, then you can shoot down arguments. And, people are like, well, then you start getting into science versus religion. No, because you can agree to disagree at a certain point. Because what both sides usually are saying is, I don't accept your theory. Because really, science isn't always fact. Science is as much theory as religion. Because both hold facts. Both hold theories. But the ultimate knowledge on both sides is never known. And that's the same with society. Take all the guns away. Oh, then, we'll be safer. Good theory. Bad in practice. History proves that. We have this election coming up. And I'm looking at it like, is there any option, any way out, any way to unite people And I'm not seeing it in any candidate at all. I don't see a uniting force. But I think that there's something that is starting to sprout. And that's the people that have been sitting by watching all this happen, finally standing up and going, you don't get it. You really just don't get it. And I think that with this, people are now finally getting the word, hey, look at what you're doing. You're fighting each other. You say that if a person says all lives matter, they're not getting the point that Black lives matter. They're saying because you say Black lives matter, you're leaving out the rest of the population. And really, when you look at it, I'm looking at it as even people that say all lives matter, the people that say Black lives matter. The problem is we really don't have a understanding of what some of the founding fathers, whether they be white slave owners, as some people, think every founding father was that way. Look at it as an understanding of the individual. How about this? How about let's stop saying Black lives matter, all lives matter. How about you just look in the mirror and say your life matters? Convince yourself that you're worth something, that you don't need a group or, a clique to hold you up, that you can stand on your own 2 feet, no matter what race you are, what gender you are, what religion or belief. Understand that you're not going to go out there and harm people. That you're going to go out there and make a life for yourself. And when the forces of government start oppressing anyone, the population has a understanding that my life matters. Therefore, that guy, his life matters. That guy over there, his life matters. The people that are doing the force against innocent people will then be recognized. Because if you truly believe that your life matters, then your first instinct isn't, well, my life matters, I should go out and harm people. If you truly believe it, it's my life matters, I should be able to accomplish whatever I want to accomplish. I want to become a retail sales. I want to become a manager. I want to become, a little mom and pop store. I want to start a chain of companies. I want to invent something. I want to do TV. I want to become an actor, a model. It's not worrying about everyone else. And that's what the media pushes. They push it day in and day out. They want you to worry about each other So you will fight each other. Oh my gosh, that person has more than me. And it becomes about that person, not you. Don't look at it and go, that person has, I'll go, nice. I'll take one. What do I gotta do to get one of these? How can I increase my wealth? Some people will be like, nah, I don't want none of that fancy stuff. I want a cabin in the woods. Do it. I really think that we can become a better society when we don't allow government to control society through all these mind games. But again, with this election, then I look back and go, but they're not listening. They're buying into the BS. And so even though, I try to be optimistic, I'm also realistic. I think it's imperative to prepare for social chaos, economic chaos, natural disaster, foreign invasion. Who knows what's going to happen? I urge people to always do something to prepare. And really, even if nothing happens in our lifetime, educate your children so they'll educate their children that it's okay to be prepared, and if nothing happens, that's okay. Because if something would happen, you'd be prepared. And really, don't buy into everything the media says, but be aware of things that the media says. I always say kind of read between the lines. Talking about being prepared, before we end this broadcast, go to ucy.tv. Scroll down towards the bottom. There's an Amazon button. If you click that, you can shop through Amazon and get all kinds of cool gear. Pretty good prices, same prices you would get directly through Amazon. But when you click that button, UCY gets a little kickback to help cover operating costs on the network's end. Go check them out. At the top, you can also click at UCY support and donate. And one of my favorite supplies to go to, definitely with non-GMO seed vaults, medicinal ones too. My Patriot Supply, if you go to antityrannynews.com/My Patriot Supply, it'll take you there. They got great water filtration, water straws, and they also, again, have the non-GMO seed vaults. You got your vegetable garden, medicinal herb, and cooking herbs. Great deals right now. If you go to antityrannynews.com/My Patriot, we'll get a little kickback to help cover operating costs. You still get the same great deal, same great prices and shipping. So go check them out. Also, if you go to antityrannynews.com/metal, take you to Magi Metal. Don't forget your gold and silver. Thank you again for tuning in here on UCY.tv to Anti-Tyranny News Radio. Stay tuned here on UCY.tv for all the great broadcasts coming up after this. And stay tuned here Friday for our broadcast. We hope to bring you some more updates from the
Aussie Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.TV.